Good evening. There are many old buildings in Britain which have their history written in blood, but even among these, the mansion in tonight's story is special. It's a matter of historical record that Littlecote House in Wiltshire was once the setting for a terrible murder. 400 years on, those who know the house well claim that this dark deed is a legacy which reverberates down the ages.
In over 700 years of continuous habitation, Littlecote House in rural Wiltshire has been owned by only 6 families. Littlecote has witnessed many events in its turbulent history, and all have left their mark on the building. One of its most notorious owners lived here in the 16th century. His name was William Darrell, but his reputation earned him the title Wild Will. One dark night, a local midwife, Mother Barnes, was called to the house with a promise of high reward if she would attend a lady who was about to give birth. Conducted up 6 steps of stone, she passed the hall at the 20th stride, mounts 31 glossy stairs, and lo, the bandage is untied.
I sent for you to do your work. Do it well and save the lady. If you succeed, you will be well rewarded. If you fail, and the maiden dies, then you too shall die.
You have a beautiful baby son, my dear.
Well, woman, so you've succeeded.
My lord, you have a beautiful son. But he has no clothes to keep him warm. Save this apron of mine.
I have no use for this child, nor any other child. I bid thee dispose of it with all haste.
Oh, my lord, I beg of you, let me take him and care for him as if he were my own. I will say nothing. You have my sworn word on it.
Give me the child. Die. And let guilt, shame, and sorrow die with you.
Whilst Mother Barnes was attending to the lady in the bed, she took a cutting of the bed hanging. She was blindfolded again, taken down the stairs, which she counted, and back to her cottage, where she was given a bag of cold and told to keep her mouth shut. She went into her cottage, but her conscience started niggling away at her, and next morning she decided to go to the magistrate and confess what had happened at Littlecote House. She was able to match the bed hanging, and Darrell was arrested. Darrell was quite an influential man and was able to bribe a judge to get him off the charge.
While out riding, Darrell met an early end when a ball of fire from the sky caused his horse to rear. He was thrown and broke his neck.
Curse on them. Damn them. Damn them all to hell.
This unhappy story was recorded by John Aubrey in the 17th century and also features in Sir Walter Scott's poem, Rokeby. After Darrell's death, Littlecote was seized by the then Lord Chief Justice, Sir John Popham. Darrell had used the house as a bribe to get off the charge of infanticide. The identity of the mother was never established. Locals believe she may have been Will Darrell's sister. Despite Darrell's curse, the Popham family held on to Littlecote until 1929, when Sir Ernest Wills bought it. Lady Wills believes that the legacy of Darrell's deeds may live on.
To me, the house was very friendly, very nice, and I really enjoyed living there. But a lot of people who came had some very strange happenings and experiences. One night I was in my room and I heard footsteps coming along the corridor, and they stopped at the door, which was very strange because I thought somebody was coming in. It sounded as though somebody was just walking along and coming into the room. But nobody came into the room, so I thought, well, that's my husband. So I threw open the door and there was nobody there.
When my daughter told me about the footsteps, I wasn't in the least surprised because I had heard the same footsteps many and many a time when I stayed there. I told her it was rubbish because I didn't want her to be frightened. But one night I had been reading and I lifted my eyes and suddenly there was someone standing at the foot of the bed holding what I took to be a child over her shoulder. She was gazing at me and I gazed at her. We didn't speak, I didn't speak, but she just looked, and a look of calm and peace came over her face, and with that she faded away from the room completely.
And fame reports the lady comes with babe of fire at dead of night, but harmless to the innocent, they come to see that all is right.
I was at the bottom of the cantilever staircase and looked up, and suddenly a figure glided along the brown landing, and it was that of a lady. She was obviously very young, and her fair hair was blowing out behind her. It was a split second to see her, but I've never forgotten it.
In 1985, Littlecote was sold to entrepreneur Peter de Savary. He took it on together with all its worldly contents, but he believes he also inherited a rather unworldly aspect of its more recent past.
When I saw the house and I liked the house, I decided to hell with the ghosts. I'm going to buy the house anyway, and nothing's going to put me off or frighten me. It was a lovely sunny morning, about 9 o'clock, and I was on my way out to the garden because there we were holding an auction of the contents of the house. And as I stepped into the hall, I suddenly saw a lady coming towards me. She was dressed in modern country clothes, and I do remember thinking at the time, gosh, which room did she come out of? She looked straight at me and she said, "You are a very evil and wicked man." And she was looking straight at my eyes, and I was taken aback, and I said, "I beg your pardon, what do you mean?" And she said, "You have taken my baby's things."
They were in the wooden box in the chapel. They belonged to my son, and you have taken them away to be sold.
And she again stared at me without smiling at all or flinching, and she said,
"Please put them back in the chapel."
"If you don't, you and your family will be cursed and damned forever in this house."
I suppose I could try and find them for you.
And she looked at me and she said, "And if you do put them back where they belong, you and your family will be blessed forever." And just at that moment, she smiled and she was gone. She was just gone. I was white, I was trembling, I was a man genuinely possessed with fear. Something very unnatural had happened that morning.
De Savary quickly found the box in his house.
And as I held the box and looked at it, I realized that I had had an experience very few people have ever had. I was holding the baby's clothes, and I had been speaking earlier in the morning to the mother, who had come back as a ghost in modern dress with a modern look. I took the box, I went to the chapel, I put it on the window ledge from where it had been taken, said a short prayer in the chapel, and told the auctioneer, "The sale may now commence."
10 years later, de Savary sold the house to Warner Holidays, the hoteliers. But even Warners insist that the box should remain where it has always been.
I'm utterly convinced I saw a ghost that day. I was cooking for a meal in the kitchen for the de Savary family, and all our staff were in period costume at that time. And I see somebody go past me and go into this little room outside of the kitchen.
Mary? Mary?
I said to Mary, who was working at the kitchen sink, "Where have you been, Mary? Why have you been out of the room?" And she said, "I haven't been out of the room at all." She said, "I've been here all the time," which of course she must have been because there was no other way out of the kitchen. So I was quite convinced then that I'd seen a ghost.
John had just gone down into the cellars. I was here, nobody else in the house. And whilst I was pottering about here, I heard footsteps up above. I thought, that's strange.